Good evening and welcome to the Town of Cary Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight. I now call this meeting to order. Our board clerk, Julie Mitchell, will take roll call for this evening.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, the following people are present: Sal Camarada, Boshana Etten, Chris Johnson, Mike Roselli, Stephen Crutchfield, Sean McAndrew, Andy Coe, Jeff Moncrief, and Ken George. Thank you.
Thank you. The Cary Community Plan will continue to be the guiding document for this board. Our role is to function as citizens advisors to the Town Council, who will make the final decision on all rezoning matters. Your citizen inputs based on the Cary Community Plan play a very important role in advising our town leaders. While this is a public meeting, it is not a public hearing. There is no opportunity for the public to speak during this meeting. If you do have comments about any of the items discussed tonight, we encourage you to reach out to this town staff by email or phone. You may also reach out to board members through email. You may also contact the council members directly through email or during any public speaks out portion of regularly scheduled town council meetings. These meetings may be streamed live on the Town of Cary website and will be posted to YouTube. All past planning and zoning meetings are available to view on YouTube. First up tonight is the adoption of tonight's agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second? Someone second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The next item on the agenda is the approval of the December 18th meeting minutes. Everyone's had an opportunity to scan through them and look at them. And unless there's any changes requested, would someone make a motion to approve the December 18th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second. Very good. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Our first case on the agenda tonight is 22 RAZ 14 Carpenter Fire Station at Highcroft, PDD rezoning. Katie Dry, Assistant Planning Director, will share the staff's presentation. Following her presentation, the applicant will share their remarks. All board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff and the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Board. This is a request to rezone 5 properties totaling 19.5 acres on Carpenter Fire Station Road in between NC 540 and Highway 55. The rezoning request is to rezone from transitional residential conditional use and residential 40 to Planned Development District minor. The properties are located outside of Cary's corporate limits, but inside our ETJ. Annexation will be required prior to development plan approval. The site is adjacent to the Cameron Pond subdivision and Carpenter Fire Station Road, as well as Highcroft Road. It's just across the street from a future Cary neighborhood park. Other developments in the area include Carpenter's Point, Carpenter Fire Station PDD, Apollo 55, Bexley, and Channing Park. This assemblage is currently occupied by detached dwellings, manufactured homes, and an automobile sales and service business. The property's northern boundary runs along Morris Branch. Additionally, Cary's GIS maps indicate a few potential streams on the site, but field determination of those features would occur at the time of development plan review. Carpenter Fire Station Road is currently a 2-lane road with varying right-of-ways, ranging from 60 to 85 feet, with sidewalk on the south side and no bicycle facilities. The Carpenter Fire Station Road capital project will widen the road to a 4-lane median-divided 105-foot right-of-way with curb, gutter, enhanced medians, and street lighting. Plans include a 10-foot trail on the south side, a 5-foot trail on the north side, and 14-foot outside bike lanes in both directions. Signals are planned at both Cameron Pond Drive and Highcroft Drive intersections. Right-of-way acquisition is in process and construction will begin in 2025. A segment of the future Highcroft Drive is on the eastern side of this assemblage. Highcroft is a collector road on Cary's planned roadway widths map and will be a 2-lane road with curb and gutter within a 60-foot right-of-way. It will include 5-foot sidewalks and 4-foot bike lanes on both sides. Russo Valley Drive is an existing local street stubbed to the property line of the adjacent neighborhood to the west. It will extend through the proposed development and ultimately connect to Highcroft Drive upon development of the adjacent parcel to the east. Carpenter Fire Station Road is identified as a future transit corridor in the Cary Community Plan. While there are no immediate plans for fixed route transit in the vicinity of the subject property, a pad for future service has been included as a condition of this rezoning. The Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan does not include any proposed greenways within the subject parcels. However, the Morris Branch Greenway Corridor is located on the north side of the site and was built with construction of the Channing Park development. It is anticipated that access to this greenway from the site will ultimately occur via a proposed street-side trail along the east side of Highcroft Drive. A future park currently under construction is just across from this site at the southeast corner of Highcroft Drive and Carpenter Fire Station Road. This park is anticipated to open this year in 2024. Another neighborhood park is located on McCrimmon Parkway, approximately 0.8 miles northwest of the site. It's also under construction and also anticipated to open later this year. The site is currently zoned transitional residential conditional use. Conditions on the parcel for the TRCU parcel assemblage limit development to detached dwellings with a maximum of 2.9 units per acre, with a minimum lot size, of 6,000 square feet and a 20-foot type B buffer along the western property line, adjacent to Simberry Glen Court. Simberry Glen Court is this road right here that ends in a cul-de-sac. The applicant is proposing a rezoning to Planned Development District Minor. This Planned Development District includes a master plan, which I'll walk you through. It includes several development pods that identify area for 325 multifamily dwellings. This would be the maximum allowed multifamily dwellings within these areas. Up to 25 townhouses, 3,000 to 5,000 square feet of commercial uses, and 15,000 square feet of community gathering area, which would include a pool and a clubhouse. The master plan also includes a provision to preserve 3 champion trees, 2 of which would be within a community gathering area, a proposal for a 50-foot type A streetscape along the residential component and a 30-foot type C streetscape along the C1 parcel, which is the non-residential component. There would be a 50-foot type A buffer along the southern and western portion of the property, along with a 100-foot building setback that you can see is identified with this blue arrow located here. So no buildings could be closer than 100 feet to this property line. As you move further up on the site along the western side of the property, they're proposing a 30-foot type A streetscape transitioning down to a 15-foot type B buffer. To the north, there would be a 100-foot riparian buffer along with a 20-foot type A buffer. Those can be overlapping. Continuing on with describing the site would have 3 access points, which would include 2 roundabouts. The roundabouts would also serve as a traffic calming device to help slow traffic in between developments. And access points would occur along Russo Valley Drive, Carpenter Fire Station Road, and then eventually stubbing to Highcroft Drive. This also includes a provision for pedestrian routes throughout the site, which would include varying widths as called out by the master plan. Some are 10 feet, others are 7, and then others are 5. Additional conditions that were proposed with this rezoning include a commitment to workforce housing. So the applicant's proposing to add a commitment for 33 of the multifamily units to be for workforce housing for a period of 30 years at 80% of the area median income. This is roughly 10% of the multifamily units. They've also committed that 90% of the multifamily units would have balconies or covered patios, 10 electric vehicle charging stations on the site, and a commitment that there will be a delayed opening of a vehicular connection to Russo Valley Drive until the 300th unit has requested a CO. So essentially what that means is the Russo Valley Drive would not connect through until the site's nearing completion of construction, therefore prohibiting essentially construction traffic from accessing that road. Staff's completed an analysis of this request using the Cary Community Plan. We found that policies from the Live, Work, Engage, Shape, and Move, as well as Serve chapters apply. When looking at the Live chapter, we note that the proposed rezoning would expand housing choices for residents, particularly within existing neighborhoods. This policy aims to enable Cary's households to age within their own communities and provide opportunities to change housing types as their needs shift. We also note that the proposal would address Live policies by providing residential development on infill sites and supporting affordable and workforce housing. By providing housing, it helps to support a growing and diversifying workforce and therefore further policies from the Work chapter. And the commitment to constructing trails that connect neighborhoods to greenways and the future park, this proposal could be addressing policies found in the Engage chapter. As part of our analysis looking at the Live chapter, we also looked at the mix of residential units within a mile of the site. This map illustrates properties within a mile boundary, looking at how they're used. And the next slide, I'll cover what that percentage breakdown looks like. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So with this particular slide that we're looking at, sites that are zoned and developed for multifamily are called out in the salmon color, pinkish color. Mixed use, which is any site that has multiple uses on one site, such as this one where they're proposing townhouses, multifamily and commercial, is identified in the darker blue. A single family detached is identified with the lighter shade of blue, and then townhouses within the beige color. So when we take a look at what this looks like from a percentage breakdown, when you first look at the existing housing mix, we note that 39% of the units currently are multifamily, 28% are townhouses, 33% are detached single-family dwellings. When you add in what's existing in the area plus what's either under review in the town of Cary's plan review group or under construction, the number for multifamily increases to 50%. Townhouses to 24%, and single detached units at 26%. We also looked at how the percentage would shift with this rezoning added in, and you can see here under the third column, the number of multifamily units, the percentage would increase to 52%, with 23% for townhouses and 24% for single unit detached dwellings. So continuing on with our analysis, when we look at the Shape chapter, we note that the proposal could further shape policies that recognize the growing public preference for mixed-use development in walkable communities. Shape also supports infill development and underscores the benefit of capitalizing on public infrastructure. Shape also speaks to provision for harmonious transitions between differing types and intensities of land uses. It embraces the use of natural buffers within the built environment. The proposal could also support the policy by looking at the building setback that's been added, as well as the use transition that's been provided with the townhomes in between the single unit detached dwellings and the multifamily that's been added. The Shape chapter also looks to maintain Cary's attractive visual quality by encouraging high-quality development with exceptional design. The applicants propose to speak to these policies through the provision of conditions, one of which is to include balconies and patios for 90% of the units, and also to provide a pool, clubhouse, and increased community gathering area around two champion trees that they will be preserving on the site. The Future Growth Framework map designates the site to be within a mixed neighborhood development category. Mixed neighborhoods call for a substantial variety of housing types, unit sizes, lot sizes, and densities. Predominant uses within mixed neighborhood can include single-unit detached, townhouses, and multifamily. Incidental uses within the mixed neighborhood development category could include small format neighborhood commercial located on the edges of residential areas. Mixed neighborhoods are also characterized by being well connected through road networks, well-designed site landscaping, common open space, community recreational amenities, and strong unifying design elements. The Cary Community Plan also notes that it may be appropriate for infill and redevelopment opportunities in the mixed neighborhood to include higher density residential uses. When we look at policies from the MOVE chapter, Cary's land development ordinance reflects on plan policies and requires connectivity between neighborhoods to ensure adequate emergency services, increase effective municipal service delivery, accommodate multimodal connectivity, and minimize thoroughfare widths wherever possible. The PDD commits to several connectivity elements that could further the MOVE chapter policies. The applicant will construct the east-west connection with Russo Valley Drive and stub it to the eastern property line, which would ultimately connect to Highcroft Drive. The applicant is also committed to construct interim access improvements at Highcroft Drive along the site's frontage. The interim access will be converted to a right-in, right-out upon the ultimate cross-section of Russo Valley Drive and Highcroft Drive. Although the applicant is not fully committed to the TAR recommendations of one inbound and two outbound lanes here, the committed interim improvements of one lane in each direction with sidewalks would provide for full movement access via Highcroft Drive and accommodate the site's generated traffic. The proposal also includes traffic signal infrastructure upgrades to Highcroft at Carpenter Fire Station Road at the intersection. The proposal could further serve policies from the chapter through the provision for 10 electric vehicle charging stations. By designing the site to facilitate the preservation of 3 champion trees, compliance with Cary's regulation for perimeter buffers and streetscapes. Cary has received community feedback on this case, starting with a neighborhood meeting that was held in August of 2022. There were 73 citizens who participated in that virtual meeting. Some of the concerns included concerns over traffic in the area and the potential for speeding. There was opposition expressed for multifamily development in the area, questions about potential environmental issues on the site, concern for the appropriate transitions between neighborhoods and an interest in those being addressed. There was also opposition to the property being developed, opposition to Russo Valley being connected. There was concern expressed over school availability. There was some concern, or some support also voiced for the development, but I should share the overwhelming concerns that were heard generally were in opposition. At the Town Council public hearing, which was in March of 2023, public hearing comments were similar to what was shared at the neighborhood meeting. There was concern over balance of housing types in the area, school capacity, general concern over the changing character of Western Cary, the connection for Russo Valley Drive to the proposed site, as well as noise and traffic concerns. At the public hearing, council comments included noting concern over the mix of housing within the area. They did note that Cary requires stubbed roads to connect to new development. There was feedback shared regarding an increased commitment to affordable housing, and feedback shared that PDD zoning should be improving on Cary's design standards. Since the public hearing, the applicant has made several changes to their application. They've increased the number of workforce housing units from 15 to 33, and this is roughly 10% of the units for the multifamily component of their site. They've also proposed to delay opening of the vehicular connection to Russo Valley Drive until the 300th unit has requested CO, essentially limiting construction traffic through that road. And they've also removed their modification requests to Cary's LDO for alternative street designs. And board, as you're aware, members of the Planning Zoning Board, members of the council, and staff have received numerous emails from citizens voicing concerns regarding this rezoning. And to summarize those concerns, they're generally consistent with what we've heard at the neighborhood meeting and the public hearing. The concerns generally are including the following, but not limited to: concern over increased traffic and vehicular connection to Russo Valley Drive, the mix of housing in the area, and concern regarding multifamily being developed next to detached dwellings. Staff has completed our analysis with the Cary Community Plan, and we looked at policies from the Live, Work, Move, and Serve chapters, as well as the Shape chapter. We, after completing an analysis, generally are finding the case to be consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. Key considerations that we looked at that required some further evaluation from our perspective were around policies on transitions. So within the Shape chapter, there's guidance on how transitions can be achieved. One is through the use of form transitions. So we note that adjacent to the single unit detached neighborhood to the west, this site would be increasing building height. So the townhouses would have an increased building height of up to 45 feet. Our ordinance limits the building height to 35 feet, so they'd be increasing that. And then there also would be some massing when you get to the multifamily development. When we look at use transitions, we do note that the applicant did take care to address use transitions through putting the townhouses in between the neighborhood to the west and the proposed multifamily development, so you don't have the multifamily directly adjacent to the single unit detached neighborhood. We also note that the applicant did employ the use of natural buffers and separation. So they proposed increased planting areas. They've increased the buffer widths in between the two uses. And then they've also proposed a building setback to ensure that the multifamily units are no closer than 100 feet to the western property line. So that was our analysis when looking at the transitions and how the plan guides us to look at those. So as you know, board, you are able to look at the Cary Community Plan and provide your own analysis of this case using the policy guidance. And if it's helpful, some questions that this board could consider would be looking at the proposed uses and making a determination if they're appropriate, specifically looking at the guidance that's found in the mixed neighborhood designation of the Shape chapter of the Cary Community Plan. Another thing that you can look at would be, has the applicant appropriately addressed transitions? And that would be going through the transitions that I just talked you through, looking at building form, the proposed uses and how they transition, and then also the separation. So are there adequate planted vegetative buffers and then actual building setbacks in place as well? You could also look at, have transportation and mobility policies been addressed? Those are found in the Move chapter. And that would be looking at the use of traffic calming through the provision of the two roundabouts that are being proposed, the delayed opening of Russo Valley Drive, as well as interim improvements at Highcroft and Carpenter Fire Station Road and pedestrian improvements. And so this is just an example of how you can kind of think through your determination. These are just a few sample policies that we pulled and some of the ones that we as staff looked at. And you can certainly add and subtract additional policies as you see fit. So this concludes my presentation. The applicant's representative, Jason Barron, is here to share their overview of the request. And following that, I'm available for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
and I'll come back to 34. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Board. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group here on behalf of the applicant in this case. Excited to be here and present this case to you. It's a 2022 case with a rezoning case number 14. So we've been at it here for a little bit, but that's kind of the nature of the zoning process, especially in areas that are growing as fast as the town of Cary, and in transitional areas and in infill areas. And this kind of meets and checks all of those boxes. Here with me tonight are representatives of Martin Fine Interest. They're the proposed developer of the site. Daniel Fine is here. And also joining me is Bob Zumwalt with BGE. BGE has provided the land planning and engineering associated with the plan that's in front of you. Katie has done an excellent job in kind of providing a thorough overview of the case itself. I'd like to take a couple of minutes just to talk about the location of the site relative to kind of the macro area that it's proposed to be located in, kind of where it stands right now, where it ultimately will grow up to be, and then talk a little bit about the manner in which we believe we have carefully crafted conditions around this rezoning and crafted a master plan that ensures that the policies that live and breathe in the Cary Community Plan have in fact been satisfied by this case. And so this aerial kind of touches a little bit, and I'll try to do both at the same time. I want to talk a little bit about the location. And so their cursor's live. So Carpenter Fire Station is the southern spine of this property, and everything is located to the north of it. As Katie mentioned, Highcroft Drive tees into Carpenter Fire, and we are improving a portion of that, essentially the portion that's on our site, as well as a little bit that's located on an adjacent site. And ultimately, Highcroft Drive is planned to connect through the site that's to our east that has been on and off of the market for the past couple years, and cross the creek and connect to this street stub, and ultimately up to McCrimmon and into the Alston area. Ultimately, at some point, Highcroft will extend all the way down to Green Hope School Road and all the way up to McCrimmon Parkway and serve, and has been designed to serve as kind of an alternative for folks moving north and south in this area without having to go out to 55. I think that's an important point, because when that happens, when Highcroft connects up to McCrimmon Parkway, the amount of traffic that Highcroft will be carrying, literally just on the leg between Carpenter Fire and McCrimmon, is fairly substantial. There will be a lot of people looking to use that as an alternative, who currently have to go all the way out to 55, take a left onto 55, and to get up into Alston. This will provide an alternative where folks can kind of take a right and other shopping and mixed-use areas in that destination center. And so, when this improvement occurs, long-term, this property will be situated at the hard corner of two highly traveled thoroughfares in the town. And I think that's an important point as it relates to the type of use that fits well on a site like that. The second point I want to make is the proximity to employment centers. As you all are aware, this site is not far from RTP. RTP still doesn't have the provision for residential, at least not substantially, and certainly not in this area. Subsequent to the Cary Community Plan being adopted, there has been significant announcements for major employers coming to RTP. Google made an announcement that they're going to be coming. Apple is working on one as well. Each of those anticipates roughly 3,000 jobs. And those jobs haven't gotten here yet. So a total of 6,000 jobs are looking to ultimately build full-term in RTP, and those haven't gotten there. And why is that important? Because those people who are going to be moving here are going to need a place to live. This site is very well positioned to be able to serve the future employees of those areas, in addition to the other jobs that are coming to this area. I just use those two as very large examples. And again, it's 6,000 jobs that they anticipate between those users. And so from a proximity to employment centers, which is what we typically try to do when we're locating higher density residential uses, this has very good proximity to those areas, recognizing that those areas where they're going to be going are not areas where you can build any residential as of today. The third thing I'll note from a proximity standpoint, the site is well situated with respect to parks. As noted in the staff report, there's a public park on McCrimmon less than a mile away. There's a future park plan for the southeastern corner of Carpenter Fire and Highcroft. And so this site will enjoy great access to that future park. Parks are great places to locate density. It increases the usership of those park areas. And then, in addition to that, we've planned for, ultimately there's a greenway connection that will be provided, as noted, along the east side of Highcroft Drive out to the greenway that lines the northern edge of the creek here. We are providing connections through our site. The Russo Valley connection that we are making through our site, and hopefully I can do this correctly, there we go. The Russo Valley connection that we are providing, this northern edge of it is it's a 10-foot wide sidewalk. And the idea behind that is when that gets extended through the parcel to our east, it will link up with pedestrian connections that will further facilitate the ability of folks to get out to that important greenway asset. And so I mention that because the snapshot in time that we have today is there's an existing single-family neighborhood to our west. And we have been very cognizant of that. And I believe my client, through our planning team, has been very thoughtful about how we make sure that we plan for the future and what it's going to look like, the present, as well as kind of the folks who are living there today. We don't want to do anything that is going to create, certainly a degradation of people's enjoyment in their living situation. And we don't believe we are, and we believe that the conditions associated with this case further that, and they also demonstrate that we satisfy the policies of the Cary Community Plan. Speaking of, as was noted, we are in a mixed neighborhood. Multifamily and townhomes are a primary use in the mixed neighborhood designation, and small commercial is also appropriate. So again, we're kind of addressing those three types of uses. That is a secondary use. And so we believe that from the land use type, we're in the right category, which is what I do in every case. When a client calls me up and says, hey, I'm looking to do something, I'm always going to the Cary Community Plan first. What does the Cary Community Plan say? Just from the basics of what are the types of uses that we want to have here, and this plan that's in front of you is reflective of those recommendations. As was noted, we have champion tree preservation on the site. Not only are we preserving 3 champion trees, we're not removing any champion trees. And it's the rare case, especially multifamily, because multifamily is larger footprint. It's, once you get into grading a site for multifamily, it's kind of tough to be able to make that happen. We've been able to not only preserve the trees, but we're not removing any champion trees. Additionally, and Mr. Zumwalt does an excellent job when he prepares his master plans, not only are we preserving these 2 champion trees, they're kind of the focal point of the gathering area. There's a 15,000 square foot community gathering area that's being located, and those champion trees are going to serve as the focus, kind of the pulse of where folks would gather in this community. And so again, it's not just that trees are being preserved, they're being preserved in a way that they're being incorporated into the development. Folks that can live there will be able to enjoy them. It will provide, just for a better experience for future residents, and I know my client is very excited about that. There was conversation related to transitions. We recognize transitions are incredibly important because, again, we have a single-family neighborhood to our west. And so we have been very intentional, our team has been very intentional about transitions with respect to use. Again, ultimately, the eastern edge of this property is going to be Highcroft. It's going to be a heavily traveled right-of-way, so we've located the commercial uses at that hard corner. And again, that's a minimum of 3,000 square feet, maximum of 5,000 square feet of commercial uses. Then we transition away from that to multifamily, and those multifamily, it's up to 325 units. Those look to be around 5-story, they're 4-5 splits is what they call those. And then transitioning down to townhomes adjacent to the single family. And so we're providing transitions from a use standpoint, kind of going from the Highcroft and Carpenter Fire hard intersection, transitioning down to the residential areas. In addition, and I'll come back to it related to buffers, and just as a correction, Katie, the building setback that we have on this southern property line is 150 feet. Not 100 feet, so I just want everyone to be aware of that the master plan says 150 in that location. It is a 50-foot buffer, so we're in addition to the use transitions that we're providing, we're also providing form transitions by increasing the buffers between the uses, providing for setbacks where those multifamily buildings, so they don't immediately abut up to them. What you might not be aware of, there's a 30-foot kind of common open space on the existing single-family community side of this property line. And so the end result is between the 30 feet that is on their common boundary and the 150 feet, the buildings that will be constructed as part of the multifamily development will be no closer than 180 feet to where residences, where backyards would start in that community. And so again, we've been careful to make sure that we are providing transitions. Locating the townhomes, 20 seconds? Okay, fantastic. We've been intentional about providing traffic calming for transportation. We understand the sensitivity associated with the traffic connection at Russo Valley, and we've worked with the staff. We don't want the connection, but the ordinance requires it. Ultimately, more people will be going through our site to get up to McCrimmon than the other way around when everything develops. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, now is the time for board members to ask questions of the staff and/or, if need be, the applicant. And we'll just start with our questions. Sal, can I start with you down there? If you have any questions?
Yeah, so this is a rezoning, so I want to kind of understand the commitment that the developer has after the rezoning as it relates to the mix of uses. In other words, is he committed to the commercial? Is he committed to 325? What sort of parameters does he have that he can move within?
Yeah, so there are a few. So first, like when you look at the geography of the site, the uses that have been proposed have to fit within those development pods. So the townhouses can only go within the yellowish T2 pod, multifamily within like the more orange pods, and then the commercial will be up against Highcroft, the future Highcroft Road extension. So those maximum, or those location criteria have been put in place. There is a phasing requirement that's also essentially for the commercial component as well, that indicates that a development plan for new development needs to identify a building pad for the non-residential uses. And let's see here. And it's also linked to COs associated with the multifamily dwellings on the site as well. So there's some phasing that'll ensure that we
So
do have.
you have to build residential first.
Well, ensure that before the residential is complete, there is some non-residential on the site.
Oh, okay, I get it. That's it for now. I might have.
Okay. Shauna?
Yes, I have a question about the topography of the site, actually. And driving today, actually earlier, many times I drive on that road, but today I paid more attention to it. On the Carpenter Fire Station Road, if you look down, the site seems to be sloping downwards. I wanted to see if that, and then thinking if we're going to do like 4-story buildings, they're going to be closer to the road. And then maybe the 5-story is towards the back area, maybe that impact would be lessened. But I wanted to know, are you guys changing the topography, or is there going to be a fill where you're going to raise it?
Yeah, so perhaps some of this question could be spoken to by the development team. So if you guys want to speak to that, but I'll go ahead and share that. As you can see along the northern side of the site, it is bounded by, very large stream buffer. So that's generally how the property is sloping. They currently do not have any conditions that indicate where the building heights will be located to kind of play with that existing topography. And when it comes to the amount of grading that would occur, sometimes that's determined at the time of development plan review. So we may not see some of that with the rezoning, but I don't know if you would have anything else to add.
Yeah, you're correct. The topography does slope away from Carpenter Fire. And so when I say that we have 4 or 5s, they're kind of base 4-story units. And where topography sets up for a 5th floor kind of on the back half, that's where those exist. So for instance, in the northernmost pod, the MF2, that backs up to the creek, that's going to be a 4 or 5. It's going to be, Russo Valley, it's going to look like 4. The back of it's going to look like 5, just using the topography and taking advantage of the ability to wire in more units. At this stage in the game, we have a pretty good understanding about how topography goes, but we're not at the engineering stage in the game. We're going to work with the topo. Some dirt will move around. We have some fixed things in that regard, so we have less flexibility than you might otherwise think, because the Russo Valley connection exists where it currently is. Carpenter Fire exists where it currently does, and the Champion Trees exist where they currently do. And so in terms of how the engineers get to work on this site, even though it slopes away from it, you have to work with those fixed variables because you can't change those things.
As a point of clarification, so even though the site's logically laid out that way, so that way you may have the building heights laying out in a certain way, that's not technically part of the rezoning at this stage. So we can, deduce that that would occur based on how the topography is laid out, but it's not part of the rezoning.
Thank you.
Couple questions. First off, you mentioned about the Carpenter Fire Station schedule. Did you say, was that a town-initiated project or DOT-initiated project?
It's in conjunction with both.
Like a lap project?
I believe
Or something like that? But it's committed?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's
You said it
correct.
was going to be built around like 2027, is that what I heard?
Construction should start in 2025 is what we're
Okay.
anticipated at this
Okay.
point.
And so there was nothing required by the developer for that frontage at all? It's already been captured inside that future project?
Part of it will depend on the timing, but yes, right-of-way acquisition is already underway for this area.
Okay. And then, one question, you mentioned about the developer had not put in 2 exit lanes, but I missed the location of that. Where was that on the map, if you don't mind
Yeah, I'd like
showing?
to see if Pritham Kanda, our transportation engineer, could speak to that more. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. The 2 exit lanes or 2 egress lanes that Katie mentioned in her presentation is along the portion of Highcroft Drive, just north of Carpenter Fire Station Road. That's the beginning of the Highcroft Drive extension. That's along this side's frontage.
Gotcha. The picture that I'm seeing right there, the little L-shaped, is that like a temporary connection? Is that what I'm seeing there?
Can I move the cursor right here?
The gray,
Yeah, the like
the light gray.
light gray.
Yeah, light gray.
Sorry, I cannot see it. Yeah, so the L shape that you're seeing, that is not interim or temporary, that is a private drive that's going to serve the commercial and multifamily units there. The connection itself to Highcroft, that'll be a full moment in the interim, and then later on will be converted to a right in, right out only when Highcroft is extended.
Okay, so the location of where this interim full access that will be changed to right in, right out,
That is correct.
where is that located? Is it,
Where the blue line, the blue L-shaped line
okay.
connects to Highcroft.
Okay, so that is like an interim access?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the one that you're talking about only has 1 exit lane?
No, the one I'm talking about is where Highcroft intersects with Carpenter Fire Station. If you
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
At the main intersection?
at the main intersection.
Okay,
yes.
so I guess my question would be why is there not 2 lanes being provided if that was what was in the impact analysis?
Yeah, my understanding is that it's, that area would have to be acquired from the property to the east.
Okay. Because they're building a portion of it, not all of it.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And then you mentioned the transitions. I got a good understanding of the use and the buffers. Was there anything that changed, you said, on the form side of things since the public hearing or since, I guess, the early neighborhood meeting last year?
Yeah, no changes on the form. The changes occurred in terms of delaying the connection to Russo Valley Drive, and the provision for the increase in workforce housing.
Okay, gotcha. That's all I got.
Mike?
The townhomes, they'll be fee simple, single family attached.
So yes, under the Town of Cary's ordinance, townhouses would be individual lots.
I'm curious if the townhome lots have access to the clubhouse and pool for the multifamily areas?
That's not necessarily something that we could speak to per the zoning. It is possible with how they ultimately set this development up. But that's not something we could actually speak to with this particular stage of the rezoning.
The community gathering area will be available to the public?
The community gathering areas don't necessarily have to be available to the public, but they do have to be available to residents who live or work within these planned development districts.
Okay. That's all I got.
Sean, go ahead.
For the buffer that will be on the west side, is there a plan to maintain the existing trees that are there? I know they're not champion trees, but, you know, there are established trees and you know, an established greenery there. You know, with something going so tall, you know, is there a plan for the developers to keep the buffers as much as those tall trees as they can to, again, facilitate? Because if that's raised, you know, regraded, then you're starting with trees that are 10 feet tall instead of, you know, the larger trees that are there that, you know, can provide some of the you know, the actual buffering to begin with.
Yeah, during the development plan phase, the town of Cary requires a tree ordinance to be submitted for any development plans. And so with that, our ordinance does encourage to the fullest extent preserving existing trees within buffers. Sometimes within a development plan, we do have to look at the proposed grading and needs for the site. And so, but that is something that's very meticulously reviewed and surveyed with that tree survey that'll be turned in.
And then I see it's being designated as PPD minor, and there's PPD major next to it. What's the difference?
There's actually not much of a difference. So a PDD minor is any site that has at least 10 acres and meets the requirements for a PDD. And then a major is 25 acres or more. So it's really just the size of the assemblage of property that you have.
Again, with the character, you know, of that is going on, and with everything that is near and the density that already does exist, you know, there is significant concern that it changes the character and the, you know, and the feeling of West Cary, and not to a positive way. And even with the developer saying, yeah, it's a great use of space, I don't know that it really has taken that aspect or that has been addressed at all in the comments that I've heard from the developer or from the staff. Yes, it meets some things, but there is still some significant concern. The other thing with the EV charging stations, you know, you're looking at, you know, over 350 houses, you can think 350 homes, and you're going to have 10 charging stations. To me, those numbers also don't correlate. I know that's the condition, but it just doesn't seem to support what they're trying to develop along the way. So, you know, I would ask, you know, do the EV charging stations number make sense as a condition? Is that sufficient? If that is something that we are, you know, that we actually value, you know, and then understand the buffers, but looking at the whole of that area, is this multifamily really the right use of this land? Townhomes, okay, but multifamily, I don't see the overarching justification. Thank you.
So, just had a couple questions regarding the spur that comes through the Russo Valley. I know it's required, right? Because it's
Yes.
an extension there. But are there other examples currently where this is typical, where you have 350 units and it going through potentially a single-family neighborhood?
Yeah, so there are some, you know, examples throughout Cary, and looking at the uses that are immediately adjacent to the fact that the applicant is proposing townhomes in between is, you know, is serving as a use transition. So that's something that's taken into account as well. But there are a few examples throughout the town where there are neighborhoods that connect to other newer developments, and we'll continue to see more, as sites continue to develop, especially infill sites where you have undeveloped properties that are developing next to adjacent single-family neighborhoods.
Well, transition could be one concern, but my main focus was just the number, like literally 350. Like, when you're connecting to newer development, that doesn't necessarily tell me the whole picture. If there's 350 units in that new development, that would be more meaningful. So I was just curious, like, is there precedent for that many homes? I guess I'm more worried about the numbers versus the transition, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good question. I don't have numbers off the top of my head
Okay.
that I'd be able to share with you tonight.
Yeah, because I was curious, you had mentioned a few minutes ago something about there would be more people going through the single-family home development versus the other way around? No?
Opposite, I think.
Opposite, yeah.
More going through the apartments because they'd try to get to Highcroft. Why would you backtrack to go through a smaller road to take? Yeah.
Main artery.
Yeah, because Highcroft, so most people in
Right.
Cameron Pond would go
When-
through this rather than these people going through Cameron Pond, I think is what I
Okay.
heard.
I didn't know if that was done from a traffic study or that's just what you'd expect. I didn't know. How did you?
I don't know if we got a traffic expert or not.
And I'm definitely no traffic expert. We retain those. The comment that I was making about kind of the ultimate future build out of this area, including the Highcroft extension up to McCrimmon, and that once that's connected, the natural driving pattern for people who want to get up to Alston is they're going to want to use Highcroft. And so there's probably going to be more people from Cameron Pond going through the apartments in order to get, or the townhomes and the apartments in order to get up to Alston rather than the other way around. And just for your edification from a traffic standpoint, and I did a poor job of managing my time, so shame on me. The traffic study shows that during the AM peak hour, our site generates 29 trips through Cameron Pond, and during the PM peak hour, it's 36 trips. And so what that means is there's one vehicle roughly every 2 minutes during that PM peak hour and then that AM peak hour making their way from our site as of today through Cameron Pond. That'll change when Highcroft is built. So I just wanted to answer the question relative to the point that I was trying to make, but also to help you understand what the traffic study shows with respect to what's on the ground today.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, I just think as in general, though, I would feel for folks that are living in that single-family subdivision with that additional traffic. That would be, if I live there, and I don't live too far from there, but that would definitely be a concern. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
So just talking a little bit about the conditions, Carpenter Fire Station Road and Highcroft, and I know that the traffic study suggested some things, and there are going to be some interim solutions offered. Just thinking through why would we not have offered, what was suggested versus the interim solution, just trying to get some feedback or some clarity around that.
Yeah, so and I probably would like, actually the applicant could speak to this, but from what we understand and what Mr. Conda mentioned previously was to be able to offer the full improvements, it would require getting additional property from the property owner to the east of the site, and the applicant could probably share more.
I got you.
Yeah, and it's maybe tough to tell, but if you see this dashed line here is our existing property line. I don't know if you can see that well. So this is the property
Yep.
line. You can see where Highcroft currently tees in to Carpenter Fire. And so what that results is, in order for us to be able to build the full intersection, we have to be able to go onto somebody else's property and build on their site. That site is, has been on, like I said, on and off of the market. At some point it'll develop. We will have to acquire some construction easements from those folks in order to fit 2 lanes of ingress and egress, so 1 lane in and 1 lane out. We can't commit at this point to being able to tell somebody you have to sell us your property in order for us to put in a turn lane.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's part of that alignment too, then you're trying to align.
Correct.
Because the alignment's.
Yeah, because we can't offset the alignment. Ultimately, the alignment is fixed. We're going to be improving the signals to make it 4-way. We just can't do all of the work because we just don't own all of the property for all of the work.
And then just to follow up on Andy's comment there, as I appreciate when I read through this, it's all right turn in and right turn out. I don't believe you have the ability to come out of this and make a left back on.
On Carpenter Fire, you do.
You do,
You
okay.
do, yeah,
When I read through it, I was unclear on that.
Yeah,
I wondered if it would drive traffic through the neighborhood.
So the extension of Highcroft that we're building today will include a right turn in and a lane coming out. And actually, it's a left turn in. So this is a full movement intersection.
Okay.
It's just 2 lanes rather than 2 lanes with a turn lane. That turn lane component is the only thing that we're missing from that. So you do have the ability to head east from our site by accessing this signal rather than going through the adjacent community and going out to the signal that's planned at their front door as well.
Okay, that's what I was trying to clarify. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's it. No more questions.
Well, my colleagues have covered most of my questions, which is the great thing about going at the end, or near the end. So I want to make sure I've covered them. So I know that you can take the community plan and say it fits these criteria and check the boxes. As I heard something about how we were going to improve air quality because there's 10 EV charging stations, and I'm looking at all the acres of trees that are going to be cut down. I'm not sure there's going to improve air quality, and I think that's just bogus. It's just, it fits that they're putting EV charging stations, and I appreciate that, and I had to get a thing and put one in my garage because I don't want to go park somewhere and get charged, but that doesn't what would I say, that doesn't cut the mustard. I think there's, it's going to decrease air quality just because all this is being developed, but that's to be expected that there's going to be some development there, I realize that. I am concerned about this increase to where in that 1 mile radius, we're going to get to 50 to 52% multifamily. I have a feeling that then Cary becomes, it's not negative toward Morrisville, because of where its location and where the people that commute to and from Morrisville to the RTP is closer to Cary in most places. I think the majority of people in Morrisville live in apartments. The majority, it is an over 50% community, as I understand it. I may be wrong on that, but I've heard that number. So I've got concern that in this mile radius where it wasn't, where Cameron Pond, got their park built across the street and are happy about that, than to have apartments next to them. So I've got those thoughts. I very much appreciate this transition. I do appreciate the whole, I think it's very well thought out. This is exactly I think what we envisioned with the Cary Community Plan of transition is that this is the natural transition, but like you say, it's the sheer number. It may not be the transition, maybe the sheer number is part of the issue there. That's most of my questions got answered. I think the idea of what people moved and got in Western Cary and what Western Cary was envisioned for in the lower density in the watershed area, this does seem to change, keeps changing bit by bit to where it's just apartments after apartments. And as I drove it today for a couple of other reasons, and then I drove by it again today, I regret all the mini storages that could have been apartment complexes right there next to the road. One story, many apartments, many storage units. It could have been 4 stories of, and unfortunately I voted for one of them. And I think this is where I'm stuck. This is where I'm stuck. I saw a lot of places up on 55 that would be excellent, but they don't own the property and they don't have an option for the property. And this is you deal with the cards you're dealt with. I realize that, but done a great job with what they're trying to develop. And it's a great place for 350 families to be near a park. I think it's an ideal place for people to commute to RTP, and more jobs are coming. This is not going to stop with 3,000 at Google and 3,000 at Apple. It's going to keep going, and where are they going to live? being along a corridor. As I understand that, when you said the mass transit corridor, this is Carpenter Fire Station Road is one of those corridors for buses or future bus routes, right?
Yeah, so currently there's not bus routes along, but it could be a future bus route. And we're anticipating being able to look at that further, which is why there would be a provision for a transit stop along the frontage.
Yeah, it's ideal for that with the apartments there as well. Let me see if, I have question marks, see if they all got answered ahead of time. I think all my questions were answered ahead of time. That's good, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of things. On slide 19, the one that showed the housing mix, maybe it wasn't 19, maybe after that. There we go.
That's the one.
Is it fair to say that the detached homes are really, they're all there today, and there really isn't any more coming in this area that would, I mean, so that's just going to drop.
Dilute.
It's going to, dilute this. Is that fair to say?
Generally, I would say so. Yeah, we're not seeing a lot of requests for new detached dwelling neighborhoods to be built.
And, okay, and just, I'm going around here. The townhomes in the multifamily that's near the current detached, I just want to make sure I heard that right. They could be 4 to 5 stories tall, the way it's proposed in here?
Yes, that's correct. So the townhomes, they're proposing a building height of 45 feet. And that's 10 feet above our ordinance standards, which is 35. And so the number of stories on those could just depend on generally how tall the interior is. And then for the apartments, generally around 4 to 5 stories is what they're proposing.
So is that a condition or?
Yes. Yes.
That's one of the conditions that you're asking us to look at tonight, right, is the height?
Yep. That's
how does that fit in with the community plan?
Absolutely. That's a part of transitions that the board could consider as you're making your determinations. Let me just run through the heights really quickly for you,
please.
for your review. So and while I'm doing that, let me pull up give me a moment, and I will pull up the master plan again so we can have that as a reference point. Okay. So they're proposing for pod C1, and that's the commercial pod, the non-residential pod.
Could you point to that with your, if
Yes.
you don't mind?
C1, this kind of
Okay.
peach color. There would be a maximum height of one floor, so that would just be a single-story building, whatever. it's
Gotcha,
called there.
okay.
And that fits in with like the neighborhood commercial that's being proposed here. For the multifamily, which is all of the pods that are more like the orangish color, they're proposing up to 5 floors for those units. And then for the townhomes, which is the yellow here, they're proposing up to 3 floors. But again, the height would be potentially up to 45 feet. It could be less than that, but that's what they're proposing.
So, as someone said earlier, the buffer seems to be pretty generous, quite frankly. But with that kind of a height, they're going to tower over any existing trees if they're even staying. So the neighborhood's going to be able to see this intense development, basically.
Potentially, yes.
And then the town makes sure that lighting is always pointed away and down, and so they shouldn't have a light pollution coming from the buildings, but it still will be there.
Right, the town requires cutoff fixtures and all lights to be pointed down, and we do review lighting during the development plan review process to ensure that what's being proposed is in compliance with our ordinance requirements.
Okay, and then it was said earlier, but I just want to reinforce it. The town would not demand, but require Russo to be extended regardless. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's a town requirement of our land development ordinance.
Okay. And I think that is it for me. Okay, that is it for me.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question that popped in their mind? Go ahead.
You made me have a couple of questions. So I do think the 180 is is generous. I'm trying to think of another example. So the hotel that was approved on Weston Parkway, maybe in 2018 or 19, they did a balloon study or whatever, and it was 7 stories, or to be 7, was that?
I think roughly, and I'm going off of memory, but that sounds
too.
about right.
Rough memories, so
And
I'm
they
rough.
did have a balloon test, you're correct.
And I believe they were even closer than 180, because I met with the neighbors. And there's another example, I guess the example was also given up by where they changed the name of that, up behind the Waffle House by US 1. There's a neighborhood, and what makes it difficult to see the hotel is the distance you are from the hotel. As it gets further away, it just, you have to, and I think they showed that they couldn't see, so I don't think it's an assumption that they're going to be able to see the apartment buildings with 180 feet of trees, especially if they keep what's there. So I want to say that I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion that they'll be able to see it, because 180 feet is a long ways to have trees between, and you have to get a real sloped angle, as opposed to it being right at you where you look over. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Is that it? You good?
Could
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I look at the bird's eye view, the satellite view?
Yes. Yeah, let me pull up a good slide for you. Is this what you were thinking?
I'm sorry?
An
Yeah, I think so.
Aerial image?
So
Okay.
I'm trying to, so you've got this cul-de-sac here, this, at the bottom, sort of left of the site, right?
Yes.
So
this one here.
if you work your way up the site, it appears that are those trees or those covered lots and sites
To the north?
to the north?
Yeah, so these, a lot of these are trees, and this is common open area for
Okay.
the development.
So, okay. So my point is here that as far as the number of lots that are backing up to this development and then picking up on Ken's, the buffer or the setbacks, I mean, if you superimposed the master plan and you've got like these two, maybe 3 houses that abut to it, I think that's going to be more than 180. I don't know. Just a point that there's really only what I can see about 3 lots that are, bordering on this development.
Yeah, and if it's helpful, the common open area that's located to the west, part of that's because of required stream buffers that are on the site, and so it's platted as open space. It would remain as common open space.
Well, and then as you work up and you cross the street there, what is Russo?
Russo Valley.
What is going to be there? Is that other
To the
stream
north.
buffers,
To the
or
north,
is
to
that
the north.
buildable land, do you know?
Yeah, so north of Russo Valley Drive is also stream buffers and also platted as common open space. So this
So-
area that's wooded would not be able to be developed.
Is that going to go all the way to the property line to the north and to the west?
Yes, it goes all the way to the north, and, once you get to the north, there are significant stream buffers that are located. Let me see if I can pull that map up just to illustrate that. So you can see, as you go north of the site, you've got Morris Branch that runs along the northern portion of this site, as well as the northern portion of Cameron Pond.
Okay. Okay, so there's not much. Well, there you can see it right there. There's like three lots that are up against this site, and really 2, but, okay. Thank you.
One more. Okay, I think we have one more question.
Was there any discussion with staff on architectural elements and commitments?
Yeah, so the applicants did commit to a requirement for balconies, and let me pull that up really quickly. So they committed that 90% of the units, the multifamily units, would have balconies or covered patios. And so that would be their architectural condition. And then, of course, they would be required to meet all requirements of our community appearance manual, which has architectural commitments as well, and requirements.
Does the community appearance manual mention architectural elements, materials, colors to be in harmony with adjacent development?
In general, we would be looking more at what's proposed across this site and to make sure that it's incompatible with what's being developed with this site. But in general, we would also be looking at, the materials, the color, to make sure it has a good compatibility.
Thank you.
I guess I have one last thing, and I don't know if it's an appropriate question, but the question would be that we didn't, if Mr. Barron said he didn't use his time wisely, is there something else that we are missing to hear? And that he ran out of time? Is that a fair question? Was there a burning statement that covers any of the stuff we've covered that he missed? Because I want to have all the information possible.
The only thing I was going to include in my remarks was reinforcing the workforce housing component, and noting that housing affordability is achieved in a variety of ways. One of them is with zoning conditions, ensuring workforce housing. Another one is with supply, and increasing the housing stock, and that, what we've been trying to do is try to balance the town's strong interest in workforce housing and affordable housing and all of these other competing policies. Yeah, that's all. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
I had one more.
Okay.
Mine, sorry. For the 5-story buildings, is their cap of 60 feet or is it more?
Yes, I believe it's 60 feet. Let me
Okay.
just confirm that for you really quickly. Yes, 60 feet.
Okay, that's great. Because that puts them probably below some of the trees if they do keep some of the existing trees line.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the question session, and we're going to move forward to our favorite time. Would someone like to make a motion for 22 REZ 14 Carpenter Fire Station at Highcroft PDD rezoning? I believe our motions will pop up on a screen magically. There they are. Thank you.
I'll make a motion. So I move that the board find case number 22 REZ 14 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board. And ultimately, growth and transition and all these things are challenging, but the 180-foot buffers, the fact that you're putting the townhomes between the two to facilitate transition, this is a corridor that's going to have 4 lanes and all of the things that we've talked about without, we've belabored a lot of points here. But I do find ultimately that the developer is trying hard to do this in a thoughtful way, the extension of, of the roads and whatnot. So I do find it personally to be consistent, recognizing that, there will be some disruption, there will be change. But ultimately, I believe that the change is for the benefit of the good. So that's my recommendation.
Would someone like to second that?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Comments?
No, he covered it.
Okay. We have a motion on the table with a second. And is there any other discussion from anyone? No further discussion? In that case, all in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we're going to have to do hands, sorry. Those opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. And I am also opposed, so that's 4. That was close. The motion carries by 1 vote. Okay, thank you. That was a lot of good discussion on that. All right, let's move forward to our next case, which is 23 REZ 04 Wheatsbury Drive rezoning. We're going to hear again from Katie Dry. Following her presentation, the applicant will come forward and present to us as well. So go ahead. Thank you.
So this is a request for a rezoning of 5 properties within the Stonegate at Sherborne neighborhood. This request is, well, let's just reset our framework really quickly. It's very different from many rezoning requests that you typically see. The applicants are not requesting in this case to develop their property or to even redevelop their site. They're requesting to modify existing zoning conditions. Specifically, they're requesting to reduce a buffer that's platted within their lots by 10 feet and to remove a required fence that's located 45 feet within their lots. So let's start by giving you some background on the request. I'm going to start with what this area of Cary looked like back in the 1990s. This is when the neighborhood was in the beginning stages of development. The site is shown in yellow. It was undeveloped at the time. And to the north of the site was the Harmony Hills neighborhood. It included just a few large lots. The rezoning applications, there were rezoning applications that were filed in the 90s for 2 development sites. These were actually both filed in 1992 and rezoned in 1993. At the time of these rezonings, there was concern expressed from the Harmony Hills neighborhood, and the applicants for each of the cases offered rezoning conditions to install a 50-foot platted buffer within lots adjacent to Harmony Hills, and that there would be a fence within that platted buffer. Continuing on with the history of the site, in 1998, a similar rezoning case to the one tonight was brought by 4 of the 5 same properties. So this was rezoning case 1998 or 98 RAZ 23. At the time, the proposed rezoning requested to move the required fence to within 1 foot of the rear property line instead of within 45 feet of the property line. You can see from this aerial in 1998, the continuous fence set back 45 feet from the property lines was currently installed. Council voted at the time unanimously to deny the request. Part of the consideration for the denial was due to the continuous buffer intact adjacent to the Harmony Hills neighborhood. And the case brought before you tonight is similar to that request. So let's fast forward to today. This is what the area currently looks like. The tracts of land adjacent to Harmony Hills are now developed. You can see that the large lot neighborhood for Harmony Hills is still mostly as is. There has been, within Harmony Hills, 1 lot has been divided into 2 lots, and so now there's a total of 6 lots within that neighborhood. And 3 of the 6 have now annexed into Cary. The rezonings approved in 1993 are established, and the buffer that is platted within those lots and the fence has been in place for nearly 30 years. This is what the fence looks like along one of the lots. It's continuous across the properties. It's set back 45 feet from the property line, and it's maintained by the HOA. So this brings us to the request for today. The applicants have indicated that the existing fence has led to unclear property boundaries, challenges for maintenance within the buffer, and lack of access to a portion of their rear yards. The current applicants are seeking to rezone their property to R8 conditional use so that they can propose changes to zoning conditions. There would be no change to the use or the minimum lot sizes. The changes would include the following. The buffer would be reduced by 10 feet. In today's terms, we refer to this area as an undisturbed landscape area. The requirement for the fence would be removed, and they are also proposing to remove 2 conditions regarding maximum height and lighting, and instead they would default to the requirements of the land development ordinance. This slide demonstrates the current conditions. The 5 property owners are requesting this rezoning to have the 50-foot wide undisturbed buffer along the rear property line and the 7-foot high wood fence shown in red. As you can see, the zoning condition applies to surrounding properties within the neighborhood. And I'll talk a little bit more about the extent of that in the next few slides. With this proposal, they would be reducing the buffer by 10 feet, So you can see that illustrated here. And again, this request would apply just to the 5 properties that are highlighted here on this slide. So I want to talk a little bit about what the makeup of that 50-foot undisturbed buffer is currently. So what we're looking at here is a copy of the plat that has been recorded for this site. You can see the 50-foot buffer is called out here along the northern property line for these sites. One thing I do want to point out is there is a 20-foot sanitary sewer line easement that overlaps with this buffer. And what that means is that because it overlaps with the buffer, the trees could be removed from the outermost 10 feet of this 50-foot buffer if at any time maintenance needs to occur on the wastewater infrastructure. We also note that the existence of the wood fence within that sanitary sewer easement is technically an obstruction with the within the sewer easement, and that could also be removed if work needed to occur along the sanitary sewer lines. So with staff's analysis, looking at the Cary community plan, when we look at the future growth framework map, we know that the site's within a traditional neighborhood. The designation is predominantly characterized by detached dwellings. The use and the lot sizes are not changing, so they would remain consistent with the designation of the plan, which again is traditional neighborhood. When we look at policy 6, which is transitions, we note that the applicant is proposing to reduce the required buffer next to Harmony Hills by 10 feet and to remove the wood fence. Again, like I noted previously, that outermost 10 feet is already within a sanitary sewer line easement, so this is an area that could currently be disturbed today. The overall, and so because of that, the overall intent of the vegetative buffer as a transition strategy is maintained with the 40-foot landscape condition. And that again is because of that outermost 10 feet within the utility easement. The removal of the fence would remove a physical barrier that does help to protect the buffer. When we look at the served chapter, we note that the 50-foot wide buffer being reduced by 10 feet could allow some selective tree removal to occur. But again, because of the sanitary sewer easement, that could currently occur in its current condition. Staff facilitated a neighborhood meeting on May 3rd and July 12th of 2023. Questions and concerns expressed at both of these meetings included questions about where the fence would be removed, concerns about removal of the fence, concern over potential for tree loss and impacts to wildlife, as well as removal of the existing conditions. In general, for both of these meetings, some citizens expressed support, some expressed concerns, and others had questions. So there was a mix of feedback that we received at these meetings. Since the neighborhood meeting, staff did receive several follow-up phone calls to learn more about the request. There was a town council public hearing in November. At that public hearing, there were public comments, some objecting to the request to remove the zoning conditions, others requesting to keep the fence. There was some concern over continuous gaps or gaps that could occur within this what is now a continuous fence. There was also support expressed for the request. So again, somewhat of a mix. Council feedback included just noting the presence of the sanitary sewer easement that already compromises the buffer as well as the fence within that easement. Also noting that this type of condition, which would be installing a buffer on private property for single-family detached, would not be accepted as a practice today. And then also concern regarding patchwork of fences that this could create, and requested for staff to evaluate a larger rezoning that could look at this for other properties. Staff's preliminary finding for this request is overall that it's consistent with the Imagine Cary community plan. We looked primarily at policies found in the Live and the Shape chapter, and transitions was also the key area that we looked at as well. So we note that with this request, the request to reduce the buffer from 50 feet to 40 feet is somewhat still maintaining the intention for the buffer. And again, that is because of that existing sanitary sewer easement. And then, of course, the requirement for the fence would be removed as well. So this concludes my presentation. The applicant is here to share feedback, and following that, I'll be available for your questions. Thank you.
While she's handing that out, hopefully you got my email from January 4th. This is the same attachment that was in that email that I sent to all of you. And Katie kind of stole my thunder. I was going to introduce this as, well, now for something completely different. Not a typical zoning request. We've lived in the second house from the east since 1998 and have had this fence looking at us in the backyard for 25 years. And finally are making this request to see if we can make that go away. Katie had an older picture, older than the ones I have. The first page of the handout shows 1992, and as she mentioned, there were 5 property owners back there, actually only 4 houses at the time. One of the properties did not have a house on it. All those properties were in unincorporated Wake County when the original zoning happened. They were not in the town of Cary. 3 of the now 6 properties have been annexed into the town, mostly to get access to sanitary sewer because the lots won't perk for well and septic. There was, Katie mentioned, they proffered these conditions of the zoning. In 1992, 93, there was a protest petition that could be filed by neighbors. And in order to avoid the protest petition, then a developer would go into an agreement with the neighbors, which is what created these constraints. So the developer said, okay, we'll develop with these constraints and you pull your protest petition away. The protest petition requires 3/4 majority vote, which is 6 out of 7. So developers generally needed to get rid of the protest petition. And so that's how they came about. Now, there are actually 8 conditions. As we've gone through 2 neighborhood meetings, the public hearing, the only conditions that are being discussed are the fence and the buffer. The other conditions had to do with the construction, the height of the houses. There was one about lighting, there was about blasting, about a hydrologic study, some other things. Those haven't been discussed at all. Those aren't an issue. It's just the buffer and the fence. So now, fast forward 25 years, which is the second page. And there are now 6 homes. Actually, 4 of those are new. 2 of the original homes have been demolished. And you can see the amount of clearing that's taken place for the 2 houses to the west, the one that's immediately behind our zoning request. That property is one that is annexed into the town of Cary. And then the one next to that they pretty much clear cut the whole 3 or 4 acres that they have right there. The location of the fence has led to some confusion with our neighbors over who owns what. When I have made it over the fence to get some trees so they wouldn't fall and knock over the fence, which maybe I should have let them do that. I was asked what I was doing cutting down trees, behind the fence. And so there is confusion about who owns that at times. During the neighborhood meetings and emails with our neighbor, we offered to discuss a compromise, and that was declined. But the original zoning, we said we just want to use the LDO code for what buffer is required. We've offered this 40-foot buffer as a compromise. The required buffer is 20 feet, 10 feet either side of the property line. So we're offering 4 times what's required. And as Katie mentioned, we're actually offering to keep the buffer, the effective buffer that's there. The sewer easement overlaps by 10 feet. The sewer easement was cleared when the sewer line was built. What's grown back in that 10 feet is certainly not champion trees or anything like that, but it has been cleared. But despite our trying to reach some kind of a compromise, that has been declined. Sorry. So there were several objection letters, objection emails from the Harmony Hills neighborhood behind us. So I just want to address their concerns. The one letter was from a property owner that's actually on the far northern side, so this really doesn't affect them. The other was from the whole group. But really, the context of this is that for the 5 lots that we're asking for, it's one property owner that's next to us. And with our commitment of preserving the wooded buffer, really the only item included is a fence, right? So in their letter, their discussion, their impact of removing the existing zoning condition, one was because the initial zoning, we were going with the LDO, they were afraid we were going to clear the woods, the 40 feet. And now, with that condition in place, that's not the case, but they were concerned about preserving this unique urban wooded habitat, which is interesting when they cleared about 3 or 4 acres on their property. But they are concerned that the elimination of the fence, the only thing that's really a concern, would create safety and security concerns. As I said to town council, I find that a little bit offensive. We're not a security concern for a town of Cary neighbor. That it would be detrimental alteration to their property. I don't think removing a fence behind 40 feet of trees is going to have any impact on their properties. Really what they see, not going to affect their property value, certainly. And that they were concerned about the cascading effect that this approval might have. Probably, if we're able to have this fence go away, at least through the rest of the Sherborne neighborhood adjacent to us, they could request the same thing. Here. I hope they do. A couple others. The zoning conditions were known when we bought our property. It's true the zoning conditions were in place. It was also conveyed to us at the time that it was a leftover from the former business zoning. I don't know if you know that Waldo Boulevard was called Trade Center Boulevard. This area was zoned for business in the original PUD document, and then it got rezoned to residential. So that kind of made sense, right? Now it's residential. That was a lingering issue, and now residential to residential, you shouldn't be required to do it anymore. I was the one who filed in 1998 to rezone and move the fence at that time, and found out, well, it's not quite that easy. And so we checked with town council. We've come into town every once in a while and asked what the consideration would be for this rezoning request. And after 25 years, we got fairly warm reception, and so we decided we would go forward with it. I think Katie stated why she thought it was denied. I think it was denied at that time because it was too fresh. All the original property owners still owned all the parcels back there, all that had worked through this agreement with the developer at that time. They were all still present, all pretty well known in the town. And so I think it was just too soon. There's also, I mentioned the protest petition. There's a recorded private agreement. And at the neighborhood meetings, the public hearing, our neighbor had their attorney here to explain what all that means. But essentially, it means that there's a recorded document that said that they agreed to make this happen in order to pull the protest petition. But the thing about that agreement is it did not obligate the town in 1993. It doesn't obligate the town now to do what's in an agreement between two private entities. And so this can be removed. The zoning can be changed. I'll still have to deal with that private agreement, but that's separate from this. It's also interesting that one of the property owners at 110 Harmony Hill Lane, Walter and Betty Hester, one of the originals, in 2013 recorded a clarification document. It's attached to the back of your packet. But the main gist of it, the statement in there is that any and all deed restrictions applied to Harmony Hills subdivision in various deeds as recorded in Wake County Register of Deeds, North Carolina, no longer apply. I'm not sure that those apply to these, but I agree with the description in there. The Hester's clarification stated that the restrictions had a 25-year limit. Well, it's actually now 30 years since the zoning originally took place, 25 years that I lived there. But I agree with the Hester's. 25 years is long enough, 30 years in this case, is long enough for us to live with a fence on our property, to limit our access to property we've paid taxes on. Whether the requirement was known or unknown or misunderstood when we purchased our home, 25 years is enough penalty. Okay. So hopefully you watched the public hearing. I think the support from council was almost unanimous and enthusiastic, if I may say so. And so I think it's time, it's fair, it's the right thing to do to make the zoning condition go away. And I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to want to start off with I hate to say legal question. Why would this not go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment? And I mean, it looks like it could be, you know, where you got a part where invalid zoning, taking property away from someone. I mean, is this going to be that? You could have 3 or 4 rezonings come from this. It's almost like this is a precedent. But just explain why this is a rezoning versus an adjustment.
A variance is what you're maybe asking about or something. So the Zoning Board of Adjustment, their ability to address this situation, they don't have it because what you have heard by both Katie and the gentleman who just spoke, everything was done by the book. The zoning was put in place in the proper methodology that was in place at the time when that happened, and everything happened correctly as it pertains to the town of Cary's processes and its role in that process. The Zoning Board of Adjustment, they can come in and they can grant variances and things in certain circumstances to essentially give a pass on our ordinances and applicable zoning. That's not what's being asked here. They're not asking to alter something because so a variance is granted in situations where you have essentially an unfair application of our rules. Now, our zoning ordinances and things, we try to, you know, the best case scenario, try to do the thing that fits everything, but that is impossible. So that process is put in place to prevent just nonsensical applications of our ordinances in certain circumstances. This isn't that because it was put in place as part of a definitive, well-thought-out rezoning at that time. So that's why you guys are seeing it as a rezoning, because that is the only way to change these rules as they are on the ground, and it's why we're all here. Did that answer your question?
It did. And
okay.
I guess I was just trying to get the point. Are we going to see 3, 4, 5, 6?
You could very well. It will all depend on the steps that these individual property owners may or may not take in the future. Not these folks who are before you.
Right. The others that are in
the others that are around you have the right to. Anybody can come in and request for rezoning. The doors are always open. It's just a question or not if Katie's going to work with them to the point where we're comfortable bringing them before you. And I do think it is important to note that, and Katie brought this up in her discussion of the council meeting, the public hearing on this, that exact item was discussed, and there are possibilities that could lessen the number of potential rezonings you could see. But as of today, you could see 50 rezonings if every individual property comes. I don't think that'll happen, but yes, that is a possibility. We can't forestall it. This could result in more coming before you of a very similar type.
For our deliberations here tonight, we should focus just really on this and not really think about the others, or what are your advice?
Correct, because what you're doing now is your job as a board is to make a consistency determination on this request. Is this request consistent with the community plan? The community plan I haven't read the whole thing, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't have a section in it about waterfall effects, right? So if it does, if I'm wrong, then yes, you can use that as your consideration. But tonight, the job you guys have before you is this
Just
consistent?
this one, and
Just
really
this
not focused
one
on
thing.
all the potentials, like you say, 55, 0. We just don't know, but we can only decide about
That
this
just means we
one.
got to spend more time together if we have.
Oh, of course, that's what we love. Okay, thank you, sir, appreciate that. Okay, I just wanted to kind of set the stage with that for everybody else. Ken, we can start down on your
Yeah,
end.
right, more questions. I've heard this undisturbed buffer discussed as an undisturbed buffer, and I know that when you're in a stream, it's probably literally means undisturbed. What does it mean they can't put azaleas here? What does this mean, an undisturbed buffer?
Yeah, so no land disturbing activities could occur. So what that means is during time of construction, no trees could be removed, no equipment, touching the site, tree protection fencing would be in place. And what it means for an individual property owner is you cannot request a building permit to build a shed or a pool within that buffer area.
Accessory dwelling unit?
Correct, yes, correct. Now, within an undisturbed buffer, if you are to add a shade-loving plant, just a small plant, that's something that could be added into the buffer because
Okay.
you're not actually disturbing the
Okay.
existing vegetation that's there. That's the key thing.
Okay, that was my question, that first question. And then the second thing to follow up, there was a concern, I guess, brought up in the letter about wildlife, how this might somehow, moving the fence would disturb. I can't see how, but moving the fence helps wildlife because they like to migrate. Our backyards, we see deer nightly or more every morning because they're crossing Cary Parkway or crossing Lake Pine and walking through people's yards that don't have fences. So I don't quite understand that. So I tend to think that the wildlife will flourish with the fence gone. That's my.
Okay, yeah,
No questions.
okay.
No questions. Thank you.
Just for sanity's sake, there's nothing, once they move, if this is approved, there's nothing saying they couldn't put a fence for their own house at the 40-foot buffer themselves if they so chose?
That's correct, yep. They could install a fence if they would like, yes.
And there's nothing with the zoning that the house that's behind these 5 or north of these 5, they can install a fence if this security issue is
Yes, absolutely.
a concern.
They can
So
install
there's
a
nothing restricting that there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good point.
Good?
Mike, awesome.
And just to be clear, the fence in the sanitary sewer easement and the buffer in the sanitary sewer easement would never stand today.
Correct. Yeah, fences are an obstruction within a sanitary sewer easement, so that would not happen today, correct?
No more questions.
No questions?
I just want to clarify about that. If the owner of that northern property decides to build a fence, would it be where that buffer ends, so that top yellow line, is that where he can, or they can put their fence if they wanted to?
Yeah, so they could put their fence, up against their property line, but no further.
Okay, so where's that top yellow line that we're looking
Correct,
at right
yes,
now?
yes. So
Okay.
this wide yellow line, they would need to determine exactly where their property line is, and they could put it up against their property line.
Okay.
Or further back.
Okay, I just
Wherever
want to
they
clarify that what that could potentially happen if they decide that that's what they want.
Any questions?
Yeah, just a matter of clarification here, because I was having trouble understanding, but I think I figured it out finally. So with the fence there, they actually don't have access to 40 feet of their land, is that it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the back 45 feet of their land. Correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions? We'll go ahead and close questions and move to motions. Would someone like to make a motion for 23 REZ04 Wheatsbury Drive rezoning? And motions are on your screen.
I would.
Go ahead.
I move that the board find the case number 23 REZ04 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans, or applicable, whichever way you say it, for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Would someone like to second?
Second.
Okay. comments, Ken, since you made the motion?
I think we met to go over this in maybe 2017, and I encouraged it to happen. So this is exactly what I think I wish there were a way around it, but this is what I said they needed to do and hoped they would, so I'm happy.
Awesome. Any other? No. Okay. Any other comments from anyone? We'll go ahead and close comments and move to voting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, that is the end of our cases for this evening, but we do have some new business. Casey Schumacher Georgiopoulos, Director of Community Projects, will be sharing some words regarding updates to the Imagine Cary Community Plan. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me back. So tonight is a continuation of a presentation we did last spring. And at that moment, we were letting you know that we were working on an interim update to the Imagine Cary Community Plan. And tonight, I'm happy to come back to you to share the update is ready for public review. And you all have a copy of the update in front of you, or the portions that are being updated, and I'll go over that in more detail. I know that there are, while they're familiar faces, there are new familiar faces to me, there are new faces on the board. And so I just want to take a moment to recap some of the slides that you saw last spring, and then we'll dive more into what's changing and the process that will occur going forward. So just a reminder, why do we do planning in Cary? And our planning initiatives is what has created the systems and the processes that make Cary the great community it is today. And by capturing the vision of our community and our leaders, Cary is an action-oriented community that wants to keep thriving. And so that graphic to the right, again, it's not just about staying on top of the arc, but it's about moving on to the next phase, what's going to keep Cary great. And so, again, if we start talking about the 2040 Community Plan, we also refer to it as the Imagine Cary Plan or the Cary Community Plan. I think you guys should eat a gummy bear or something every time it's mentioned at your meetings. That'd be a fun game, huh? The plan was adopted in 2017, and it is Cary's comprehensive plan. And the plan establishes a long-range vision and policies for Cary's built environment and how to serve the community. And the creation of the Cary Community Plan was a 5-year effort with a high level of citizen participation, which was key to the creation of the plan. And again, the purpose and the values that are incorporated into the Cary Community Plan still resonate today. So the plan continues to serve as Cary's community plan. And therefore, with this interim update, we're not proposing to overhaul the Imagine Cary Community Plan, but we are proposing to include new or expanded initiatives in the plan. And the Act chapter established a time frame for interim updates and major updates to the plan. We're at the point of doing an interim update for the plan. The next time we do an update, it will most likely be a comprehensive update to the plan. So here you're seeing just 4 sections being updated. The policies of the plan remain applicable today, and are used in all aspects of our decision making. We anticipated as part of the adoption of the plan, the interim update ensures that the plan remains up to date. So again, kind of repeating myself here, but we would update the plan with any new initiatives or needs of our evolving community. And so what's changing in the plan, or what are the updates that we're including? We'll have a new preface for the plan, so capturing our accomplishments and acknowledging the implementation and the growth of the community over the past 5+ years. We're incorporating the 2021 Cary Housing Plan that was adopted by Council into the chapter, so you'll see the goals of the housing plan incorporated as new policies in the LIVE chapter. We're also expanding our efforts related to the environment in the plan. So previously, the environmental policies were included in the SERVE chapter, and those are now being incorporated into a new chapter called Enrich. And then we're updating the SERVE chapter because of some of the changes within creating the Enrich chapter, but also focusing on our evolving community and how we plan to serve the community in the future. And you might be wondering about, what are these other plans? Because I think I've come and talked to you about the PRCR master plan happening. So similar to how we're incorporating the Cary Housing Plan policies, we'll also be updating and coming with comprehensive updates or comprehensive plan updates for future plans as they're adopted and in order to incorporate them into the plan. So the plan is still to come forward once the PRCR master plan and some of these other plans are updated to do comprehensive plan amendments and incorporate them into the Cary Community Plan or update, as you see here, the Engage chapter, which is made up of some of these plans. And so how do you review the plan? The draft is available on Cary's website now, and I will be sending you a link in the morning, a direct link. So you're welcome to take the hard copy you have with you today. If you don't want the hard copy and you just want to do it electronically, feel free to leave that. We'll be environmentally sensitive and reuse that for a different board and commission. But it is up online now. And we're using the same tool as the Urban Forestry Master Plan used for their comment period, or for their review and comments on the plan. So it's all loaded into that system now for citizens to comment online in that plan. And then in order to see what's changed, you all are familiar with how we track these changes based on seeing them as comprehensive plan amendments or as LDO amendments. The current draft is just text for ease of review. So the final draft will look prettier than what you see today. So you might be wondering, where are the graphics and where's the beautiful images that we see in the Cary Community Plan? We will incorporate that after this initial draft review. We want to make sure that you're focused on the text and what's incorporated there. That's really the main changes to the plan. And then just as we would for an LDO or comprehensive plan amendment, you'll see the strike-throughs in the red text. The preface and enriched chapters are new to the plan, and so those are just in plain text. So you won't see any strike-throughs or red text in those. That's all new text. We just left it as black plain text. And so in the live and serve chapters, you'll see this markup formatting of black being no changes, or just normal text being no changes, the red text being new text being proposed, and then the strike-through being proposed text that's proposed to be deleted, excuse me. And so then the process for reviewing the draft is available, actually, it's up online now, but we said tomorrow, just in case it didn't launch correctly. So the draft will be available from the end of January through the end of March, so a little over 60 days of a public review period. During that time, we're going to all the boards and commissions and the task force in order to give you an update similar to what I'm giving you tonight. And then we're going to come back to you, and we're going to come back to you at your March meeting. And we're going to go back to the other boards at their March meetings as well to get feedback and their comment, and in order to give them time to review the plan, but then also come back and have a conversation. Scott's actually going to lead that March meeting, so I will not be here for that. I apologize, but you'll be in good hands with Scott. And then once we have all of the comments gathered, we'll do the updates to the draft. We'll put it in the graphic framework that you're used to, and then we'll continue through a typical public hearing process. So presentation to council, for the public hearing, coming to you all for the presentation, and then in action, and then back to council for hopefully approval of the draft. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. You're welcome to email me with questions. And if you don't want to spell out my last name, you can email 311 and they'll send it to me.
Thank you very much for that. And I know there's some board feedback, but I'd just like to volunteer this board. If you need something, if you need 2 or 3 people, I'm sure you would not have any problems getting volunteers from this group to give you citizen input. So don't hesitate to call upon us if you need it.
Well, I do hope that you all spend time with the draft and put in comments as you need to. And if you want to add those, and you're welcome to add those in before we come back to you in March.
Okay.
And I think March will be a good time for us to give you an idea of what we've been hearing so far from the boards, kind of as a precursor to then before we come to you with the regular public hearing process.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Is it possible, I know we talked at some point that maybe in the past there have been work sessions for a board like this. Is it possible that could be a work session on one of these where it's just delved into in that type environment? with us?
We could consider that. I think also working with Katie and Julie about what might be on that March meeting in order to have enough time to have the conversation. I think get into it there and see what's changed, and I think we could have a further conversation about that, and Chairman Crutchfield as well. We talked with you before.
Okay, just let us know. We're available to assist you. This is a big deal, so.
Thank you.
All right. All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and we will send comments.
Awesome. And I will send you an email tomorrow morning with the direct link to the website where you can
Okay.
find the draft.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I believe
That's it.
that's it. Okay, and in that case, that concludes our meeting for this evening. I know there was a lot of information tonight, and I know we went a little bit longer than normal, so I appreciate everybody hanging in there, and with that, we are now concluded. Thank you.